Welcome to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/Animal Stories for Kids. And now, it's time for our story. Once upon a time, there was an ape named Ming. Ming the ape was a young ape and lived in the forest and loved fooling around in the trees, discovering new things to play with, and chasing little critters around for fun. One day, as Ming the ape was playing around with some branches and jumping from tree to tree, she came into a clearing in the forest where there weren't many tall trees. And as she stepped into the sunny clearing, she noticed her shadow for the first time. Ming always lived in the forest, and as a young ape, she had never really seen her shadow before. She was always playing in the trees, where the sun rarely came through the thick leaves and branches, and so she was really curious about her shadow. At first, she thought it was a critter, and she wanted to chase it. But she couldn't get close enough to even grab it, so she ran around chasing the shadow. When Ming the ape jumped up to a tree branch to try to jump over the shadow to land in front of it, the shadow amazingly jumped up too. And as Ming landed on the ground, her shadow landed too. To Ming the ape, the critter was an amazing runner and jumper. She saw the critter stop at a big rock, and as she ran to it, the critter didn't move, and Ming knew she would finally catch the critter, so she ran fast toward the rock, and she pounced on the critter, but as she got closer, it still didn't move, and then, wham! She slammed right into the rock. And as she fell to the ground, she noticed the critter also fell to the ground. And when Ming got up, the critter got up too. "Wow," Ming the ape said. "This critter is tough and fast, and it's not afraid of me at all." But Ming wasn't going to give up that fast. So when she got up, the shadow got up too, and she started to chase her shadow, thinking that it was still a critter. But no matter how fast she ran, her shadow always stayed ahead of her. She even got tired from chasing her shadow, and she wondered if this critter wasn't actually a critter. So Ming stopped, and she walked away, thinking that the critter was just too fast for her to catch. But as Ming the ape was walking back toward her resting area, she looked behind her, and she noticed the critter was following her. Then Ming thought, what if this critter isn't a critter, and it's actually trying to eat me? So she kept walking and looking back, and the critter was following her. So Ming the ape started walking faster and faster and looked back, and the critter kept following her. This was now a little concerning to Ming. She was confused on why the critter was now chasing her, but also why the critter was still able to be so close. Ming did not like the feeling of being followed, and now this critter was chasing her. So Ming the ape ran fast, and her shadow kept chasing her. And as Ming climbed up the trees and started jumping and swinging from tree to tree, her shadow kept up with her. Ming's shadow kept chasing her through the forest, over rocks and trees and through rivers. She was really getting tired, but she kept running away. She didn't want to get caught and eaten by this thing that wasn't quite a critter to her anymore. It almost seemed like it was a predator chasing her down the forest. As tired as Ming the ape was, she kept on getting away from her shadow, thinking it was a predator. There was just no way of beating this thing. What kind of predator is this? She thought to herself. I never had a predator chase me like this and climb every tree and swing from every branch. As she was losing energy, Ming the ape saw a little cave in some rock formation on the edge of the forest. And so as she kept looking back, hoping the predator wouldn't catch her, she jumped up, grabbed the branch, and swung herself by a vine into the opening of the small cave. As she was in mid-air, she looked back again, and the predator was still behind her, and she thought to herself, "Oh no, I guess this is it. I'm going to be a predator's meal, and they're going to catch me and eat me in this cave. Well, at least I tried with all my power to get away, and if this is how I become a meal, then this is it." Ming looked ahead and jumped into the cave opening, and as she landed in the cave, she closed her eyes, ready to be a meal of some strong, powerful, and fast predator. And as she sat there on the floor of the cave, eyes closed, shaking and trembling and scared, she waited and waited, and then she opened her eyes, afraid to look behind her, and she waited and waited again, but nothing happened. So she slowly turned her head around to face her predator, and as she turned around, she saw nothing. Ming the ape looked around and walked around the cave to look behind some rocks, and she found nothing. Ming was confused. She didn't understand where the predator went, and she thought to herself, "Maybe I outsmarted the predator. I could have sworn it was right behind me." Ming the ape looked around. Ming was confused. She didn't understand where the predator went, and she thought to herself, "Maybe I outsmarted the predator. I could have sworn it was right behind me as I was jumping into this cave, but I don't see anything in here." So she sat down in the cave and started to think, "I'm going to wait until sunset, and maybe the predator will forget about me outside." So Ming the ape waited, and eventually she saw the sun setting off in a distance, and it was getting a little darker outside. So Ming peeked her head out of the cave to make sure nothing was around. She didn't see anything. She felt so relieved. She thought to herself, "Whatever that thing was, I think I outsmarted it." And Ming started to go back to her resting place. And when she got back, she climbed up a tree and got onto a thick branch way up high and just started to relax from a long day of running around the forest. And as the sun was setting, the light was peeking through the trees and was barely shining on Ming the ape's eyes. And as she turned around to get the sunlight off of her eyes, she noticed her shadow again on the side of the tree. And she stared at her shadow and slowly reached her hand out to touch it. And as her hand got closer to the shadow on the tree trunk, she pointed one of her fingers and touched her shadow on the tree. She then traced the shadow around, and it was the shape of herself. And she couldn't help but start to laugh. She then realized that her shadow was just her body blocking the light and creating the shape of her own body that wasn't lit by the sun. And that it wasn't a critter or a predator, it was her shadow. She had been chasing and was chased by her own shadow the whole time. Ming laughed at herself. She was silly to have been so scared of her own shadow, and to think that she ran out of energy and hid in a cave, frightened about her own shadow. And as the sun set and the stars began to shine, Ming the ape curled up for the night, and as she fell asleep, she thought about her shadow. She now understood that it was her body blocking the light, but she also knew that it was a part of her. She was glad that she learned that she had a shadow, even if it was a little bit scary at first. The next day, Ming woke up and began to play. She saw her shadow again, but this time, she wasn't afraid of it. She knew that it was just a part of her, and she was okay with that. And Ming the ape played all day long, and she had a lot of fun in the forest, climbing and swinging from tree to tree. She didn't even notice her shadow anymore. She was too busy enjoying herself. And the ape lived happily ever after. The end. The term ape is used to describe any of a multitude of tailless primates, which includes all the different types of gorillas, chimpanzees, orangutans, bonobos, and gibbons. So when the word ape is mentioned, it's describing one of any of these different types of primates. There are 20 species of gibbons, 4 species of siamangs, 2 species of gorillas, 2 species of chimpanzees, including bonobos, and 3 species of orangutans. Apes are found in Africa and Asia, and they live in all sorts of different habitats, including rainforests, swamps, mountains, and forests. They are arboreal, which means they spend a lot of their time in trees. Apes are omnivorous. They mostly eat vegetation, and some eat fruits and insects, and even small animals. The main predators of apes are leopards, tigers, and crocodiles. Apes live in groups that can range in size from a few to over 100. Apes are intelligent creatures that are able to learn and solve problems. They're also very social animals that form very strong bonds with those in their family groups. One of the most famous apes in scientific research is Koko the gorilla, who was able to learn American Sign Language and learned over 1,000 signs and was able to express a wide range of thoughts and feelings. Another famous ape is Washoe the chimpanzee, who learned how to use a keyboard to communicate and was able to learn over 300 words and use them to communicate her experiences and thoughts. Many people get confused with apes and monkeys, but the main differences are that apes have no tails while most monkeys do. Apes are also larger and have larger brains than monkeys, and apes tend to live longer than monkeys. But apes and monkeys are both primates. Gorillas are the strongest apes. They can lift up to 800 pounds. Gibbons are the fastest apes. They can swing through trees at speeds up to 35 miles per hour. Siamangs are the loudest apes and can be heard up to 3 miles away. Have you seen a real-life ape before? If you have, where did you see it? If you want to write to us, ask your parent to email us at animalstoriesforkids@gmail.com and tell us what you think of our stories. We would love to hear from you. Thanks for listening to Animal Stories for Kids. If you like our stories, please give us a 5-star rating, subscribe to our podcast, and share it with your friends and family. If you're listening on Spotify, you can support the podcast through listener support. Plus, check out exclusive show-related content and join the community at patreon.com/animalstoriesforkids. Until next time, bye!